From bankruptcy to big investment, Detroit in 2020 has a lot going on. Announcements that Ford is investing in the old train station, the new bridge to Canada under construction, GM to transform the Hamtramck plant into an electric car manufacturing center, and FCA with the new Jefferson North Assembly plant. In the past 10 years, new restaurants have opened quickly, and shops fill storefronts along Woodward and downtown. There's new housing in Midtown, investment in skilled trades programs, a lower unemployment rate. But serious issues remain. The population isn't growing. Education in city schools is slow to improve. The poverty level, while dropping, is still higher than in other big cities. Detroit has more renters than homeowners, and the city is still straightening out its system of assessing property taxes while the list of blighted properties to be demoed grows. Reliable transit still elusive in the city and connecting through the suburbs, and many residents look to investment in their neighborhoods, public safety, and help for small businesses to thrive. We are just a few weeks away from the state of the city, and Mayor Mike Duggan did a one-on-one interview here with Conference Chair Dennis Archer Jr. talking about where things stand in the city right now.
The General Motors announcement is still breaking news.
Well, when General Motors announced in November of 2018 they were closing down the Poletown plant and all that meant to Detroiters, and they hadn't given me any advance notice, I was pretty upset. My question is, could you make what they call DHAM the site of the future? And at one point in her career, Mary Barr was actually the plant manager at the Detroit Hamtramck plant. This was not something she was doing lightly. And so over the coming days, we had a number of conversations. Mark Royce, her right hand, who's just a through and through Detroiter, they started to develop this plan. You think about what they're doing. You're talking about a plant that was built for gasoline-powered cars. To do trucks is a huge investment. To convert to all-electric vehicles, it's a $2.2 billion investment. It's building an entirely new plant. The magnitude of the change is breathtaking. They're going to make these Cruise Origins. If you haven't seen the video, go online. But basically, these are vehicles that are going to be self-driving vehicles that will be the cabs of the future. And they're going to start running the service in San Francisco even this year. It's going to be all electric trucks and SUVs. GM absolutely believes the future, and so does Ford, and so does Waymo and a number of others, that will be no gas emissions, no accidents, because you can do this. And I'm just really pleased with the fact that they changed course and they made the investment here.
We often talk about inclusive development and being inclusive in these opportunities. And a lot of times when we talk about that, we're talking about jobs. But equally as important is a path to ownership and entrepreneurship. And just because it's my neighborhood, I see what's happening now on Livernois.
Yeah.
So now we're going from a big $2 billion industrial investment to small business in the neighborhoods. So talk about the redevelopment of Livernois.
Ordinarily, you don't start out as an entrepreneur writing high rent checks in downtown and midtown. And in the neighborhoods, folks don't want to go to downtown and midtown for their services. If you're out in that northwest area where I used to live, you basically go to the suburbs. And so we had this idea. Livernois had an enormously rich tradition as the avenue of fashion.
That's right.
For many years. And over the years, that slipped badly. But we said, what if we brought it back? But this is what we do. If, as a community, you do it in a respectful way. You go into the neighborhoods, talk to the business owners, talk to the neighbors, and let them talk to each other as a group. And then we put $17 million into that streetscape. I had to take a lot of grief in the short term, but I think when you see what happens, this is the kind of city we're trying to build.
Can you talk about and just reiterate the importance of the census and what we can do as members of the community to help you get this done?
Well, in 2010, of course, the city was going through some turmoil and not much effort was put in. And DTE, which shows me what the utility hookups are every day, thinks the city was probably undercounted by 30,000 people. That probably cost us $300 million in services. Everything from money for school lunch to Medicaid to development programs and the like. And the minority undercount is very real. People of color are more distrustful of why the government is asking who's in their house and what do they make than Caucasians. That's just the truth, which means that our community has to have that much more effort, but you need trusted voices. And across the city, in a number of the ethnic areas and the like, whether it's the Bangladeshi community, the Latino community, the Yemeni community, it's been absolutely terrific to see everybody come together. And the thing that we're emphasizing over and over is, under federal law, the Census Bureau cannot disclose any details of your census application for 70 years. They can't give them to the IRS, they can't give them to ICE, they can't give them to local government, they can't give them to your car insurance company. And so we're saying to everybody, and the apartments landlords are all hosting meetings to say this, fill it out honestly. And where you sleep at night April 1st, don't be afraid to say, I'm a Detroiter, it'll count for the next 10 years.
You mentioned something in the back, that there's 2 times in the last 50 years did we have a Democrat in Lansing and in D.C. Talk about the importance of the upcoming election and what that sort of alignment would mean for the city.
The 2 years was the 2 years of Granholm and 2 years of Obama, 2009, 2010, which in this city was a traumatic time in what was going on. And so you have not had a time in this city in 50 years where a mayor could sit with a Democratic president and a Democratic governor and really be able to lay out what is an urban agenda with Lansing, Washington, and the like lined up. So obviously, I'm campaigning hard for Joe Biden, but if we can get that alignment, the next term as mayor could be an historic time.
For more on where the city stands, let's bring in our One Detroit contributors, Nolan Finley of the Detroit News and Stephen Henderson of American Black Journal. Hey guys, it's good to see you.
Good to be here.
All right, Detroit in 2020. Go, Nolan.
Well, I feel like, you know, Detroit, through this decade-long resurgence, if you will, has benefited from a good, strong economy nationally and a growing economy in Michigan. The question you always have about Detroit is, can it withstand a downturn? And you got to believe there's a downturn coming somewhere. You don't want to be a prophet of doom, but it's only natural to think we're going to have a slump in the economy at some point, whether it's because of a virus or because, you know, the national economy dips. Have we reached a point where we can sustain, you know, where we can get through a bad stretch? That hasn't been tested yet.
It's sustained, but still get some crucial things done that need to be done, though.
Yeah, well, so I went back and looked at a piece that I wrote in 2009 about Detroit in 2020. So I kind of predicting some of the things that we would have and would be dealing with. And there's some really interesting things on there that have come true, and there's other stuff that hasn't. One of the ones that didn't is the bridge, right? In 2009, we were talking about the second span across the Detroit River. The piece I wrote presumed that would be built in the middle of the decade. We aren't even, you know, I mean, they're pouring footings and stuff, but we're not that close to that. It talked about also, though, neighborhoods and how neighborhoods needed to be part of the equation when we talk about revitalization. And we've turned to that in the last few years, but it's slower than I think you would have predicted 10 years ago that things would happen. I mean, there's great stuff happening in lots of places, but there are still lots of neighborhoods that are just really struggling.
It's a different dynamic with the neighborhoods. I mean, in downtown, there was a lot of pent-up demand for a downtown experience, for an urban experience. The demand for the neighborhoods still lagging. I mean, you're not getting a huge infusion of people into this region, new residents into this region, and you're not seeing a whole lot of people leaving the suburbs to go to Detroit neighborhoods. The trade-off, you know, the value proposition, still not all that great.
And you also have a lot more and a lot different things that go into that. It's not just one problem to solve. You're looking at public safety. You're looking at property tax assessment. The Detroit News just did, a huge storyline on taking a look at that, and people being able to stay in their homes. That's all part of neighborhood success. And then you talk about schools. So there's still a lot of different facets when we talk about neighborhoods that goes into the success of neighborhoods.
Yeah, you're talking about people and human capital that is undervalued and underinvested in our city. And that's the hardest thing to move. It's the hardest needle to move from negative to positive, because it takes a lot of time. It is more costly than some of the other things that we've done, and there aren't push button answers to a lot of the problems, right? I mean, there aren't businesses. If there aren't businesses downtown, the answer is to attract some businesses and open some things. And Dan Gilbert went and did that. It wasn't that difficult. Investing in people who have been underinvested for generations and moving them along to opportunity and changing the environment that they live in so that that opportunity can take seat. That's really different.
But I think what you need to see is a stabilization. I'm not sure we've hit that yet. We need people
still dropping
to
down in some places.
Stay in the neighborhoods as they move up the economic ladder.
Right.
We haven't seen that in Detroit. People move up the economic ladder, whether they're white or black, and they move out.
Go.
And I think you're starting to see people stay in some of the neighborhoods, some of the better neighborhoods. But again, unless you get growth, it's hard to imagine you're going to get people leaving suburban neighborhoods to move into Detroit neighborhoods the way you've seen people leave the suburbs to come to downtown Detroit.
So let's
it's
talk
a
a little bit
dynamic.
about growth, and we're going to be able to do the census in 2020. And so what will those numbers really tell us, Nolan, and what kind of impact will that have?
Well, I think they're going to be better than past census numbers. And Mayor Duggan's speaking today. Like every other mayor I've ever heard since I've worked here, we got to get a big census count. We got to make sure we count everybody. And a lot of things work against that. There's still a lot of transient population in the city, a lot of mistrustful people in terms of giving the government their information. It's always important, and we always fall just a little bit short of where we want to be at the end.
Yeah, I'm worried about the census, frankly. I'm worried about what the number actually is. I think it's smaller than we think that it is going to be, and I'm worried about making sure that everybody gets counted. I think there are a lot of people who feel either like there is no point in filling out the census, or that there is a negative consequence that's possible if you do it. I have heard specifically from people who say, I'm worried about immigration reactions to the census. I'm worried about child support, those kind of things. These kind of rumors take hold and they spread like wildfire in cities like Detroit, and you have to push back against it. We're doing a lot of things, I think, to do that.
But there's a lot of big information campaigns that are trying to roll out.
But I really worry that it's not going to be enough and that our count is going to be low.
Well, the one thing the mayor talked about in terms of the census was he says 60% of the people living in these downtown apartment buildings don't claim Detroit as their residence. And they don't need to do that on the census. They just have to say, we live here.
I live here. Yeah.
All right, well, there's a couple of other things that I think we're going to be tackling in Detroit and the region in the next 5 to 10